Christine Lagarde just confirmed Euro bailout and the European Central Bank are cutting the key interest rate again by 25 basis points. Christine Lagarde is actually saying here that on one hand, risks are all over the place, so there are massive risks right now. That basically translates to we want to print even more money. On the other hand, it presents its inflation outcast, i.e. the inflation outlook, where inflation will go, and it assumes an inflation target of 2% by 2026. But that is clearly a lie, because we see so many things here that suggest that more and more money is being printed, and that the euro is now becoming an absolutely soft currency. And she confirms that again in this speech. That is why the inflation outlook you are presenting here makes no sense at all. And they're really lying to your face here. We also look at the interest rate cuts, because it is not only the European Central Bank that has lowered interest rates. We're also seeing interest rate cuts in China and even massive monetary programs being pumped into the market. It seems as if all central banks around the world always have the same pattern. As soon as there are certain problems, it is simply, money is just being thrown around, we're just piling on more cash, hoping that something will change. But it doesn't. The only result is that fiat currencies keep devaluing, and Bitcoin could be the big winner here. Because this is free marketing for Bitcoin and for anything that can't be inflated at will, like gold, but Bitcoin is also a major beneficiary in this situation. The speech is really heating up, and we're going to take a look at that in just a moment. But here, Matt Hugin, the CEO of Bitwise, had something very interesting to say about it. Here at the ECB, in Germany, and in China, we're seeing it right now. And today, the immediate reaction to any kind of economic volatility is to print money. That's why all roads lead to Bitcoin. So that's a very clear statement, especially with what we're about to hear. From Christine Lagarde. The dystopian speech clearly indicates that anyone who doesn't have Bitcoin right now has lost control over their life. I know it's a bit of an exaggeration. You don't have to own Bitcoin. As far as I'm concerned, let them inflate you in the form of the euro or something like that. Or you can have other tangible assets like stocks or, for that matter, gold or something like that. But if you're saving in euros, you're really the big loser here. And now, check this out, what's happening here. Our queen, Christine Lagarde, the queen of money, has something to say about the current situation in the eurozone. Just a quick note for the record. So here, 25 basis points would lower the interest rate. We're now at a 2.5% key interest rate. So that was the current decision here. That was also expected. And that's exactly how it turned out. And it might keep going that way. So we need to take a look. And for everything else, check out here.
We have huge uncertainty. Some people have used the adjective phenomenal uncertainty. And we debated as to whether it was high and rising. But suffice to say that it is all over.
Oh, that's pretty wild. Did you hear that? She's saying here we have huge uncertainty, and they even debated about it, whether it's just a lot of uncertainty or if it's phenomenal uncertainty. That means they really have no idea how things are going to go from here. The economic situation is really uncertain with the tariffs, all the global events, and what's happening in Ukraine, all the war stuff and so on. And this is already the preparation, saying, hey folks, the situation looks really uncertain. And if anything goes wrong, if some emergency situation arises, then the people here have already been prepared and can then decorate the money printers at any time. They can ramp it up even more, lower the interest rates further at any time, roll out QE packages whenever they want, and basically turn the euro into a soft currency, which means they can massively redistribute money again. But here you can see they're already setting the stage, and the euro bailout is more or less being confirmed. That means they're not presenting themselves as if they have everything under control anymore. Instead, they're really showing that, yeah.
We have risks all over, uncertainty all over. So under those circumstances, our determination is obviously to reach destination. But we will do so without pre-committing to any particular path. And you have seen that sentence in our monetary policy statement in the past. I think it is even more relevant at the moment, given the level of uncertainty that we have. So we are not pre-committing to a path. And you might have some governors who will say that, I believe that it is their individual views. I can assure you that the collective view around the table is that we do not pre-commit to a path.
And here you can also see how contradictory the statements are. That means, on the one hand, you say, hey, okay, there is massive uncertainty. Now they say that they don't commit to a certain path, not to a certain, yes, how do they say, to a certain way. But the central bank's job is just to bring inflation down to 2%. The central bank has no other task. The central bank is not here to stimulate the economy or anything like that. Just like Christine Lagarde suggests, you get the impression that she wants to stimulate the economy, that she wants to save the economy, or something like that.
Or there's always talk about how they want to save the climate. And now the ECB has this indirect mandate to save the climate. Look here, the outlets are so nice. A lot of people have written that the sockets here are so nice. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the outlets.
All of this is not the job of the European Central Bank. If inflation gets out of control here, then there is only one thing we can do: raise interest rates. But now they're giving themselves a lot of leeway and saying, hey, we don't have a predetermined path, so we're not committed to anything or anything like that. And now here comes the kicker later. Christine Lagarde is going to drop her inflation forecast, where she's going to be completely sure about it. By 2026, they'll get back down to 2%. Even though she says that there's no plan here, and that they really don't know what to do now, she's just sure that they'll get back down to 2%. What? It doesn't make any sense at all when you spread so much fear. And here, they're basically already rhetorically preparing for the next QE and stimulus packages.
And we will be, as ever, and probably more so, data dependent.
That's also a lie that keeps getting told to you, that decisions are made based on data dependency. That doesn't work at all because the central bank always uses outdated data. That means the data is always about 2 or 3 months behind. And that also means that central banks are always late. So when interest rates are lowered, it's not that simple. If they were to do it 2 or 3 months too late, they would do it. And when it needs to be raised, it usually happens 2 or 3 months too late. So the idea that they're data dependent, in theory, that's fine, but in practice, it doesn't work if you don't have real-time data.
The data indicates to us that in order to reach destination, the appropriate monetary policy should be to cut. We shall do so. But if, on the other hand, the data indicates that it is not the case, then we shall not cut and we will pause. So that's really where we are. Not pre-committing, being data dependent as ever, and deciding on a meeting-by-meeting basis.
Do you notice anything? That doesn't make any sense again. She says here, okay, if we have to lower interest rates, then we will lower them. And if we need to raise the interest rates, then we'll raise them. But we still haven't reached the inflation target here. Now you're still lowering the interest rates, and inflation is probably going to keep running away from that. That means they're basically doing the exact opposite of what you're trying to achieve.
So I know some will find it frustrating, but I'm terribly sorry. But in the circumstances we're facing at the moment, anything, more would not be very responsible. From one day to the other, the situation changes dramatically. And our projection, the measure of underlying inflation, the price of energy, you just name it. Risks are all over the place.
Well, you have to at least give her credit for not lowering interest rates any further, because she's saying, all right, hey, we can't lower interest rates any further, because there's just too big a risk that inflation will definitely run away, because there are just too many risks. The framing is already being set up here so that if something were to happen, they can really fire up the money printers big time. And I think that's going to happen soon. So the only question now is when the big money printing spree is really going to kick off again. By the way, I have here. In my research, I came across a very, very interesting image. And here you see 3 women. Here you see Christine Lagarde, here you see Ursula von der Leyen, and here you see Angela Merkel. And here Wall Street Matt writes, he writes here, these 3 women will go down in history as the architects who destroyed Europe. Angela Merkel, Christine Lagarde, and Ursula von der Leyen. I found that a very, very interesting comment. I don't want to judge it or anything, but I just wanted to share it. As, let's say, thoughts, I would be interested to hear what you think about that statement. Is it really the case that we might be looking at 3 women, Christine Lagarde, Ursula von der Leyen, and Angela Merkel, who are driving the EU completely into ruin? Feel free to drop that in the comments below. And now let's actually take a look at the inflation outlook. From Christine Lagarde. She's going to address that right now in her speech. Here we see that back in 2024, we were at 2.4, now it's down to 2.3. Then we're supposed to drop to 1.9 in 2026, and then back up to 2.0 in 2027. And that's really, really exciting to post an inflation outlook every time. But you also have to say, Jan Wessenfeld is already writing it down here. I love these inflation outlooks because they're always completely wrong. So, roughly speaking, he's writing that here. And that's just what always happens. It always looks at 2%, but most of the time it just doesn't happen. But you either overshoot or undershoot it. But you never really hit that 2%. But listen to what Christine Lagarde has to say about that.
And let me just mention one thing, because some of you might be attentive to when we reach that target of 2%. And if you look at the projection of staff that you will see, it's very early in 26, not late in 25. And that is so because of energy prices. Staff has considered that on the basis of the cutoff date that they have, which was quite a few days ago, it was legitimate on the basis of future prices, both on oil and gas. It was legitimate to probably increase by 0.2% the inflation projection. If you look at energy prices today, whether it's oil or gas, the impact would be seriously different. So that gives us, the dimension of uncertainty that we have and the many risks that we have to look at. It's energy prices, it's trade policy, it's potential retaliation, it's massive investment programs, it's a lot of variables that we have to be attentive to, that we have to be vigilant about.
Well, I think it's pretty cool. The inflation target kind of reveals itself here, the inflation plan, and then somehow desperately tries to explain why they're going to hit that inflation target, even though everyone clearly knows they're not going to make it. There was already a report from, I think, Mario Draghi, who then said, hey, the EU, it doesn't look good at all. Christine Lagarde has already confirmed that. In several speeches, it has been said that things don't look so good in the EU right now. And if the European Central Bank would just stick to its mandate and only focus on price stability, then, yeah, they would definitely make it here. Getting to that 2%, but they always want to meddle in the economic cycle, stimulate the economy. And if the economy simply hits the wall, then interest rates simply have to be lowered. And sooner or later, there will also be inflation. And sooner or later, they'll pull out the money packages again, just like during Corona with the PPP program or whatever. So that's very, very likely to happen. And that's why what you're saying here about the 2% is very unlikely to happen. But feel free to share your guesses with me. I mean, it could happen under certain circumstances by just changing the way they measure things, like the basket of goods and stuff. But feel free to let me know what you think about it. And if you're super bullish on Bitcoin right now, what's happening here is nothing more than a big promotional event for Bitcoin. That's the cool part. Bitcoin doesn't need a marketing team because there are people like Christine Lagarde. So if you're bullish on Bitcoin here, I'll put a link in for you below. 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily, safely, and simply buy Bitcoin. Here, with the code, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. I'm signing off here. Look, I picked this from a tree here in El Salvador. Now, I think it's not a lemon, but more like an orange. Something along those lines. For sure. I'm signing off here with the orange from El Salvador. Peace out.